My name is Skip Sauls. I'm a product manager for the Analytics Cloud at Salesforce, and I'm going to show you a few new features we've been working on that help Wave, part of our Analytics Cloud, work with things like Lightning, Visualforce, and Process Builder. We'll talk about a couple different SDKs, and we'll show a demo. In fact, we're going to focus mainly on a demo, just a few quick slides, and then talk about how you can get access to these pilots. I'll give you some links and that sort of thing. So let me talk a bit about the history of this. So when I first started with Wave a little over a year ago, I had moved over from being a product manager for Lightning components and Visualforce. So I have a lot of history with the platform. And I came over to Wave to help build out our partner ecosystem and build out our platform itself, all the developer-centric features. I come from the programmatic world. I feel very passionate about that. And one of the things I strive to do is help reduce what we call the declarative cliff at Salesforce. And this is where we take you up. We say, use all these great tools. We say, you don't have to write code. And this is really awesome. And then someone says, I need to do this. And you say, well, how do I do that? And we say, oh, start over again way down here with Apex, Visualforce, etc. So we've thrown you off the cliff effectively. Now, it's not quite that dramatic. That just makes for a cool story. But we're trying to reduce that cliff with things like Lightning, and we're trying to avoid having that kind of cliff with Wave. Wave is, as you know, much younger than lots of the platforms, so we don't have quite as much of a history there. But Wave itself is also aimed at business analysts and business users and that kind of thing. And just like Salesforce, the ultimate goal is to make it really easy to embed these awesome analytics charts and results and that sort of thing in an app so everybody can use them. But just like Salesforce platform itself, there's oftentimes things that Salesforce didn't think about in that release. So they didn't ship the feature, they didn't do it a certain way, and you've got your customers, your managers, your bosses, et cetera, saying, I need this in my app. So you have to go do the programmatic piece. So there's always this kind of push and pull between the programmatic world and the declarative world. We like to say that it shouldn't be so dramatic between those, and let's make sure we always have the APIs, that we have the metadata, that we have the SDKs and that kind of thing in place. So when I first started with Wave, I said, oh, how do I interact with Wave? And they said, well, you really can't. I said, well, what do you mean you can't do that? And they said, well, everybody should come into the dashboard. And every time I talked about wanting to do things, they said, well, we'll put that into a new release as a dashboard feature. And I realized that they had, within Wave, within the Analytics Cloud, a very dashboard-centric mentality. And that's fine for a lot of things. That's the world they see. But I came from a world where people wanted to put Wave into an application. They said, it's part of my page in Salesforce Classic, or it's part of my page in Lightning, or it's part of some custom app. And they wanted to be able to interact with it in some way. And you really couldn't, because Wave is running in an iframe. It's in its own little island. Even when you embed it via Visualforce or Lightning App Builder and that sort of thing as a component, it's still running an iframe there. Now, that doesn't mean you can't communicate with it, but it's effectively locked down by Salesforce security. So all the domain checks and that sort of thing are in place. And it's even hard to hack it. Now, I'm a product manager who came from Lightning, and I know how to turn on certain perms and get rid of all these little security checks. And I built some demos and said, here's what we could do if we open this up. So I showed it to various people within Wave, various customers, and kind of built up momentum. And finally, got them to agree to let me build these SDKs to let us open up Wave and do some really cool things there. I'll show you those in just a second of the demo. So starting with Spring 17, we have Lightning events that are fired by Wave and consumed by Wave. Now, people say, why Lightning? Well, obviously, there's a huge push with Salesforce for Lightning experience, but the Lightning components, the framework that runs it, is actually designed to run in almost any container. And this is something very different from a lot of UI frameworks you might deal with. So if you've used Angular, Polymer, React, all those things, a lot of them have a very strong opinion about who owns the page. And they assume they own the DOM, they control everything. Even when they have virtual DOMs, they oftentimes want to control everything. Lightning comes at it from a slightly different perspective because we have the multi-tenant, et cetera, view where we have to let partner apps run inside it. So when you hear things like the locker service and all the different things that Lightning does that may seem kind of odd, it's so we can allow App Exchange packages to be installed, and you can have all these components playing nicely on the page. And importantly, they don't corrupt your data. They can't get into the Salesforce APIs. The SID, if you will, is actually not quite as strong for Lightning as it is for Visualforce. And that's by design, because you don't want the components coming from yourself or from partners stomping all over things inside there. Now, it makes it frustrating if you're a developer. You're thinking, well, I don't have this free-for-all that I had in Visualforce. But even if you've been in Visualforce and Apex for a while, you've probably noticed we've locked that down over release. So, and that's just to protect the Salesforce customers, protect Salesforce itself. It isn't us trying to be mean. It's just the fact that we can't have all these crazy hacks happening. The good news is by going the component route, we get things onto AppExchange easier, security reviews are much easier, and importantly, as things like the locker service evolve, we're going to be able to take advantage of being able to open up features. For example, better access to REST APIs and that kind of thing. It's also interesting here because, as I mentioned, Salesforce or Lightning doesn't care where it runs. It's sort of container agnostic. And I'll show you these components running outside of Salesforce, running on Heroku, but it could just as well be Amazon or Microsoft or whatever you'd like to there. So I'm not going to go through the gory details of all these events. I'm going to show these to you in a second, but I want to show you that we've got 2 events in the pilot. One, which is going to send messages to Wave. These are not the final names for GA. We'll actually rename these. These were actually bubbled up from our internal runtime and just sort of exposed in the raw. But this basically says, from Lightning, Visualforce, other container, or another container, pass in a filter into Wave. So you can actually tell Wave, what do you want to show on the screen? And then on the flip side, you have send messages to window. This is probably the worst named event I've ever seen, but the devs just sort of exposed it. This sends it out. So it's basically Wave broadcasting it. The actual name will probably be something like selection changed, because it's going to contain the selection information from Wave. And if you've ever played with Wave, when you click inside the bars and that kind of thing, it'll fire these and it'll contain all the row data from that so you can do something with it. And this can include things like record IDs and so forth that I'll show you. Things like the step and so forth may or may not be important, but we'll give you some context information. And these are the only 2 events in the pilot. It's very simple, very easy. As we go forward to GA, we will have things like describe events. Be able to say, what does that dashboard do? What data sets does it have? And that kind of thing. But for right now, you'll have to kind of know those things about it for the pilot. And also for Apex, we've been working on a pilot for the SDK. And this is interesting because you can already call out to Wave via REST. You can go into Apex, do the REST calls and that kind of thing. And that works fine. The problem we found is that people want to use the Wave query results in things like workflows, for things like Process Builder. And as soon as you do a call out, you've gone off into asynchronous land and you've lost the flow, so to speak. So you can't put in a Process Builder node that calls out to Apex and have it do something that influences the next step in the node, so the next step in the flow. So what we've done is provided a synchronous Wave query call. You can do wave query.execute, and it'll execute that query, return back the results, and it's still in the same context of that Apex class that you've called there inside of a Process Builder. And so this is maybe a small point, but it's part of a entry into a larger Apex SDK. We'll probably end up going with the Connect API route and give you actually objects for things like dashboards and data sets and that kind of thing. And the goal being is that anywhere you can build your Salesforce apps, you can get to all of the Wave data and vice versa. So make it so that Wave feels like it's really a native part of the platform and not quite so far out there. And for those of you who've used Wave, you may or may not be aware, Wave runs inside of the Salesforce data center, but it's actually on its own bank of servers. So it's actually remote from platform. It's not actually a platform service. But by tying in things like these APIs, the security model, the packaging, and that kind of thing, we can make it all work very nicely with the platform. So I'm going to show you a demo here in a second, and I wanted to show you this really cool Lightning thing. I don't know if it'll show up really well on this screen, but this was something that showed up on, I think, Mashable this morning, and it's from a video taken by one of the astronauts who's from Denmark on the ISS, and it's a type of lightning called a blue flash or something like that. Blue jet lightning, exactly, yeah. So this is from the ISS looking down, which is just remarkable to me to see this kind of thing. You kind of lose the effect here, but it's a really cool video. So if you look that up, it's neat. I just wanted to show you that, so I add a little bit of fun to it. So I'm going to go drive this, probably sitting down so I can show things. As I've mentioned, I'm not going to do a whole lot of slides for you, but I do like to show a lot of demos. So let's go first to Lightning Experience. And I'm going to show you this page built with App Builder. So I went into App Builder, I dragged and dropped a few components. These components include the Wave dashboard that we ship out of the box. That's this component here. And that has some attributes for things like which dashboard you want to show, what's the height, and what's the optional filter you want to pass in. And then the rest of these components are all just standard Lightning components. These were built using the dev console. This is a wrapper around a force record view. You'll see this in a second. And then a few things that show like a list. This actually is generated from a standard Apex class doing a SOQL query. And then I've got a few things that are tied into the events. So in Wave itself, when I click here, this fires an event that Lightning can listen to and take some action on. So that record view listens for that send message to window event, and it says if there's an ID in there, go show the record associated with that ID. So I didn't have to write a lot of code for this. If you've done any Lightning component programming, force record view and record edit are really cool. You can do all the layout-driven forms and that sort of thing with just the record ID and a couple of attributes. Makes it very simple. You don't have to write a lot of code for that. And as you click through here, you can see, basically Lightning driving Wave. And if you go down here, this is the event monitor, and this is just meant for show off. It's just to kind of demonstrate things, but it shows the payload for each one, and you can take that information and do something with it. So there's your ID. You can look up the record like I'm doing above, or something else. So we're trying to make it very easy for Lightning to basically consume things coming out of Wave. And if you have on multi-select, like here, this chart has multi-select. If I do something like this, you'll see you get back an array with the index over here. So 0, 1, 2, 3 there. So you get all the information. So anything you can see in Wave, you can now do it outside in Lightning. Now let's go back out here and reset it. And one of the things with Wave is that in the dashboard, you can put in things like this. I can scroll down here. I can filter on things like stage name, like so. And that works fine if you want to build everything in the dashboard. But a lot of our customers and our partners say, hey, I've already got a UI. I don't want to recreate that UI inside a Wave. It doesn't look like my UI, and it's not as functional as my UI. I want to do something more. So what we've done here is let you send that information into Wave, and I'll show it to you here in the filter test. This is just my own little test thing where it sends in this JSON along with the dashboard ID, and when you fire it, Wave will now respond and do the filter correspondingly. So that's Lightning telling Wave what to do. And you can go in here and just modify this in place and click fire. And if you've ever done Lightning component programming, you know that events are very easy. If you haven't done it, you can fire an event with like 3 or 4 lines of code. It's very simple. Get the event, set the attributes, fire it, and go. It's very, very easy to do. Arguably as easy as just regular DOM events. Now, to make it more interesting, we have sort of a business sort of view. This is a custom list. I built this very rapidly using Apex, Lightning, and a Lightning design system. And I added the little toggles here because every time I click the toggle, it says create a new filter. So let's filter on closed one again. We can add in maybe perception analysis, value proposition, etc. And you'll see Wave doing its little thing as it modifies that filter. Or you could say do everything, and again, nothing will be back to default. Or let's filter on the name. So let's go to Edge and Grand Hotels and Express Logistics. You guys have probably seen these companies before because this is just a standard DE org. But the point being here is we can now build a real UI that fires these events and tells Wave to do something. So a customer I spoke with last week has a customer service form, and as they fill in pick list values and change things in the form, they want Wave to show things about that to let the customer service rep know something. And their goal is to actually reduce the number of cases filed. They want somebody to say, hey, there's already something there, bubble up that information very rapidly and show them things about that they wouldn't ordinarily know, that they would ordinarily have to dig through lists and that kind of thing trying to find. So that's the real world usage of it. Now, I mentioned Lightning Out. This is running on Heroku, so let's go ahead and do a refresh. And we'll do a OAuth hop. And this uses Force.js, which is written by one of our dev evangelists. And this is actually embedding it into a remote app. I use sort of the lowest common denominator here, where it's a raw page using something called EJS on a Node.js server. But you could use any framework you want to here. I use Lightning Design System, but you could also use Bootstrap, et cetera, et cetera. Lightning Out really doesn't care. And I put in some additional styling just to make it look a little different so it doesn't seem like it's a Salesforce app. But these are all running independently of Salesforce now, connected by OAuth, much as you would do with REST API. But it still behaves in the same way. You still get the same sort of functionality. And you can now run this almost anywhere. So by using these as components, we can take advantage of features like Lightning Out and embed these things in various places. Okay, now one more quick demo here. I love our platform. Not everything about it's always perfect, but I think it's got a lot of cool features. And one of the things people say is, hey, you know, let's make Wave work with things like Alexa. Well, I don't know how to do Alexa. I don't even have an Alexa. But I've done work before with other similar things, and you know, Slack and others have similar type stuff. You give it a command and make it do something. I'm bigger into the API side of things. Like, okay, how can I give you a REST API that Alexa or something else can hit and make it do something? So in my little demo here, let's bring this open up here. I've got a little UI, and I'm going to run this from Salesforce 1 actually. And let's bring up this QuickTime player. Oh, I'm getting mentions on Twitter. Woo. And I have no idea why my clock at the top says 9:41 a.m. It's something just really baffling has gone on with this phone. And it said 9:41 since this morning, so it's like my clock has died on this thing somehow. And I'm afraid to reset it before the demo. But let's go to this Visualforce page that I created just as a little test called the push events. And you'll see here, I didn't optimize it for mobile yet. It doesn't actually push event test. Well, where did that go? Well, it worked before the demo. There we go. And so in this, I can select it, and for some reason it's clear here. I have no idea why. But there's actually some events behind here. And this is called the send messages to Wave. So this actually is going to serialize the event, and it's going to basically send it up to the server over REST, and then it creates a push topic that gets fired. So if you've done push topics before, they're much like triggers. You basically set it up and you say, if these things happen, create this push topic event. On the client side, you subscribe to it using a comment D library. So this gives us the ability to do those same sort of things remotely. Now, would you really do an event like this? You know, this is me just testing things out. But in the real world, you might have a thing where you can talk to Alexa and tell it to manipulate Wave, like that kind of thing. And so this is just some sample code. It's just meant to try the things out. But I wanted to show you, now that we're part of this platform, we can take advantage of all these things. So Wave itself can take advantage of being inside a platform and use all the cool features. Now, we also have a process builder integration with Apex. And I won't show you a lot of this code, but basically it does a Wave query. You pass in a query string, and time permitted, we'll come back and look at that. But basically, I've got a process that says call out to Apex, do something. And what I've done here is a very simple test on opportunities. And this is actually in Classic. Let's reload that. And the code basically says when you modify a value on the opportunity, change the corresponding value on the account associated with it based upon the Wave query. And as you know, Wave is very good at querying very large data sets. You can query millions of rows. You can do things that would be difficult or maybe perhaps impossible to do using standard SOQL type things. So this is not a really great example, except to just kind of show off that it's integrated. And here, if I put in a what is it, suggested discount of 10. And when I save that, it actually runs that flow. And if I go to accounts and look at the Burlington thing, it has set a custom field which is called the global discount of 20% here. So that actually was set by the process builder flow. And again, in Apex, you can see little bits of code for that, and we'll come back to that. But I'm down to my 5-minute mark. So a few little quick demos. What I'd like to do is encourage you all to sign up for these pilots. And You need to have some experience with Wave, obviously a Wave license installed. They're really easy now with DE orgs. And then experience with things like Lightning and things like Visualforce and so forth. I've got a really nice tutorial where it's basically cut and paste. I'll give you a unmanaged package of all the code, or maybe even a GitHub repo. So it's not like you have to write a lot of code, but you'll need to understand some of the basic principles for it. And then you can sign up here on Bitly with Wave Web SDK and Wave Apex SDK. So it's easy enough to remember. And if you forget it, just send me a Twitter message or something like that, and we'll get you signed up here. This is for the London's Calling event. Normally we require a pilot record to be created and a Salesforce rep to get involved in that kind of thing. So take advantage of this and let me know if you want to play with these. We'll start activating those probably in the next few days once I'm back and can go set the perms and that kind of thing. And then we'll set up some sort of chatter group or community that will let you give some feedback for that kind of thing. I'm very excited by it because I love the platform, I love to do these things. I'd love to hear from you what other events you'd like to have, what things would be useful, you know, how we can make it easier for you to build apps. I'd like to give a little call out to the folks at Salesforce. I know several of the folks here who have participated. They asked me to include a slide, and I said sure. I think what they're doing is awesome, and you guys should definitely check it out. I think they've got flyers. I don't think I have any up here. But look around, and several of the folks are here in the room. They can raise their hands, and I just talked to them about joining Salesforce. And as you know, Salesforce is committed to volunteer-type efforts. I've actually sent info on some folks within Salesforce who go to South America sometimes, and they build houses, and then they go surfing. So that's part of their volunteer time on VT-on, as we like to call it. And then finally, we'll do a quick Q&A in the last few minutes here. And I'm here all day if you have other questions after this. But before Q&A, I'd like to thank you all very much. Thanks for coming, and I look forward to hearing from you and maybe seeing some cool stuff you build with this. So any questions? They've got a mic here if you do.
There's two different types of Wave license, so is this going to be available to both types of Wave license,
It's
ISVs and platform?
It's going to be a Wave platform license required for this right now.
So, sorry, maybe a silly question. I'm not that familiar with Wave, but is it available for developers? Can I just, like a sandbox, so I can, as a developer org, so I can just go and start coding?
I think all the new DE orgs get created with it, and you can just go enable it. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I just want to check, you've got a habit of showing us these cool demos, and then we don't always get our hands on the technology. If we sign up for the pilot, is there a limited lifetime on that?
The pilot can be turned off at any time at will, and I'm the will on that. And so we're marching towards general availability, but forward-looking statement, I can't say safe harbor anymore, but forward-looking statement is summer is our intended target for GA.
So if I build something, the Dreamforce, I'm probably okay to demo it.
If you build something for Dreamforce, we'll help you.
Okay.
So we're trying to show this stuff off, obviously. So let us know if you're interested in that kind of thing.
Yep.
All right, with that, we need to wrap up, but thank you all very much.
Oh, please, yes. Great job. I feel like I've seen it before.
Thank you. Yeah. You probably did.